I had always believed that family dinners were a time for warmth, laughter, and togetherness. But that evening, everything changed. As the smell of roasted chicken filled the house, and everyone sat around the table, I felt an unsettling chill. Charlotte, my daughter-in-law, had been acting distant for weeks. Tonight, I thought things would be different. But what she whispered to me across the dinner table made my heart stop. "I'm pregnant with your husband's baby." Her words hung in the air, heavy and cold. I stared at her, my mouth dry, unable to find the words. I had spent years raising my son, supporting him, and welcoming her into our family. Yet here she was, breaking my heart in the cruelest way imaginable. The room felt like it had suddenly grown smaller, the walls closing in on me. My son, Mark, was sitting across from me, completely unaware of what had just been said. He was laughing, talking to his wife about their plans for a vacation. But all I could hear were the echoes of Charlotte's words, looping in my head. I wanted to scream, to lash out, but instead, I did nothing. I simply sat there, trying to keep my composure, trying not to let anyone see the shock in my eyes. For a moment, I considered what it would take to confront her, to shout at her in front of the family. But no, that wasn't the way. I had always been the calm one, the one who kept the peace. And I would do it again. Only this time, my revenge would be quiet, calculated. I would wait. The rest of the dinner went on as if nothing had happened, but I knew better. I knew everything had changed. As the evening wore on, and the laughter around the table grew louder, I sat in silence. My thoughts raced. What had my son done to deserve this betrayal? And why had Charlotte decided to tear this family apart? It didn't make sense. But I would find out. I would get to the bottom of this. I would make sure that this wasn't swept under the rug, that this wasn't just some secret that would be buried. I would make her regret the day she ever stepped into this house. But for now, I said nothing. I just smiled, nodded, and played the part of the dutiful mother. And all the while, I was plotting my next move, knowing that this family dinner, this seemingly innocent night, would change everything. I didn't say anything at first. I just sat there, holding my breath, watching the flicker of candlelight across the dinner table. Charlotte had said those words so casually, as if they were nothing more than a passing comment. But in my heart, it felt like a bomb had just gone off. I could feel my pulse in my ears, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me. Mark was still talking, his voice cheerful, unaware of the storm brewing at the table. I couldn't let him see how much this had affected me. Not yet. I needed time to think, to figure out how to handle this without making a scene. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. Things would never be the same. I had always prided myself on keeping the peace in this family. I had worked hard to make sure we stayed close, to make sure that no matter what, my son and his wife felt loved and supported. And this was how they repaid me. As I watched Mark laugh and joke with Charlotte, I could barely look at them. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of it all. How could she do this to me? How could she do this to our family? My heart ached at the thought of it. I had never thought of Charlotte as anything but a part of our family. She was the woman I had welcomed into our home, the one who had become my son's partner, the one who had made him happy. And now, she was carrying my husband's child? My thoughts were interrupted when Charlotte stood up from the table, excusing herself to go to the bathroom. I watched her walk away, my eyes narrowing slightly. She didn't seem the least bit guilty, didn't seem bothered by the weight of her confession. If anything, she seemed almost too calm. I could hear Mark still talking, his voice light and carefree, as if nothing had happened. I had to stop myself from shaking with anger. How could he not see it? How could he not see the truth of what was happening right under his nose? I knew I couldn't confront her right now, not in front of Mark, not while we were all gathered together. But that didn't mean I wasn't going to do something about it. I wasn't going to let this slide. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, not after everything I had done for this family. I had spent years taking care of them, supporting them, making sure they had everything they needed. And this was how they repaid me? No, I couldn't let it go. Not now. Not ever. When Charlotte returned from the bathroom, she gave me a quick, almost dismissive glance, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to scream at her, to ask her how she could live with herself, but I held it in. Instead, I just smiled, though it was forced. I had to play the part, at least for now. I had to keep the peace, at least for the rest of dinner. But inside, I was already planning. I was already plotting how I was going to make her regret the day she ever stepped into this house. I didn't know how yet, But I would find a way. I would find the truth, and when I did, I would make sure she paid for what she had done. As the evening wore on, I forced myself to keep up the facade, to pretend that nothing was wrong. But every time I looked at Charlotte, every time I saw her sitting there, smiling as if she hadn't just shattered everything I thought I knew, I felt my resolve harden. This was far from over. No, this was just the beginning. I woke up the next morning with the weight of what Charlotte had said still pressing heavily on my chest. I hadn't slept well, tossing and turning, my mind racing with all the possibilities, all the unanswered questions. How could she betray me like that? How could she do something so cruel to our family, to my son, to me? I lay there in the darkness, trying to make sense of it, but there was no sense to be made. I couldn't help but think about how everything had changed in an instant. Just last week, everything felt normal. We were all a family, sitting around the dinner table, laughing, sharing stories. Now, I felt like an outsider, as though I had somehow become invisible in my own home. I had always been the one who held everything together, the one who made sure everyone felt welcome, loved, and supported. But now, I was questioning everything. Was it all a lie? Had Charlotte always been playing this game, slowly infiltrating our lives, waiting for the right moment to strike? I thought back to the times I had caught glimpses of something off in her behavior, the way she would sometimes look at me with a coldness I couldn't explain. And Mark, my sweet boy, how had he not noticed? How had he missed the signs? I needed answers. I couldn't just sit here, waiting for Charlotte to destroy everything I had worked for. I had to take control. I had to find out what she was really up to, and why she was doing this to me. That day, I decided to pay her a visit. I would not confront her immediately. No, I had to be patient. I had to outsmart her, and to do that, I needed to know more. I couldn't just accuse her without the proof. I had spent so many years raising Mark, guiding him, loving him, only to see him fall into her manipulative hands. It was time for me to fight back, but in my own way, the way I always had, quietly, carefully, and with a plan. I arrived at their house later that afternoon, just as Charlotte was finishing up her errands. I knocked on the door, my heart racing as I waited for her to answer. She opened the door with a smile, but it was strained, too forced. She had no idea what was coming. I stepped inside, looking around the house that had once felt like a welcoming place, but now felt cold and foreign. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. I didn't answer right away. I just walked past her and into the living room, settling down on the couch. She followed me, still trying to play the role of the perfect wife, the perfect daughter-in-law. "Is there something you need?" she asked, her eyes darting around, clearly nervous. I smiled at her, the kind of smile I knew she hated. "I just wanted to talk, Charlotte," I said, keeping my voice calm. "About last night." Her face faltered for a moment, and I could see the slightest flicker of panic in her eyes. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think you do," I replied, leaning back into the couch, watching her closely. "You see, I've been thinking a lot about what you said last night. About the baby, and about how you've been behaving." She took a step back, as though trying to distance herself from the conversation. "I'm not sure what you're implying," she said, her voice shaky now. "Oh, I think you do," I said again, my tone colder now. "I just want you to know that I'm not going to let this slide. You may think you've gotten away with it, but I'm not stupid, Charlotte. I know what's been going on, and I'm going to make sure the truth comes out, no matter what." She stood there, frozen, unable to speak. The silence between us grew thick, the tension almost unbearable. And then, just as I was about to leave, I noticed something. A small detail, something that shouldn't have been there. A piece of paper tucked under the coffee table. I reached down and grabbed it, feeling a surge of both anger and triumph as I read the words written there. It was a receipt, but not just any receipt. It was for a medical appointment, and the name on it was not hers. The name was Mark's. I looked up at Charlotte, my eyes narrowing. She had no idea I had seen it, no idea I knew. But I did. And now, I had something to use against her. She wasn't going to get away with this. I was going to make sure she regretted ever crossing me. I stood up, smiling at her one last time. "I'll be in touch," I said, my voice laced with coldness. "And trust me, Charlotte, this isn't over. Not by a long shot." She didn't respond, just watched me as I left, knowing deep down that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The receipt I had found earlier was burned into my mind. A doctor's appointment, with Mark's name on it. I had spent hours trying to make sense of it, to figure out what it meant. Why was Mark seeing a doctor with Charlotte, and why had they hidden it from me? I had to know the truth. I had always trusted Mark, believed that he would never do anything to hurt me. But now I wasn't so sure. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how little I actually knew about his life with Charlotte. She had been the perfect daughter-in-law, always smiling, always polite. But there was something about her that had always made me uncomfortable. It was as if she was hiding something. And now, I was starting to see what it was. I waited a few more days, pretending everything was normal. I attended family gatherings, smiled at the right moments, but inside, my mind was racing. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. The truth had to come out. I made a plan. I would confront Mark, ask him about the appointment, and see if he would tell me the truth. I knew I couldn't just walk up to him and demand answers. He would lie. I knew that. But I had to find a way to get him to tell me the truth. It was late one evening when I finally decided to speak to him. I waited until Charlotte had left for a while. Then I walked into the living room where Mark was sitting, watching television. I sat down across from him, taking a deep breath before I spoke. "Mark," I said, my voice calm, though my heart was pounding. "I need to ask you something." He turned his head toward me, his face lighting up with that familiar warmth. "What is it, Mom?" he asked, his voice soft. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it was hard. "I found something," I said, "and I need to know the truth." I reached into my purse and pulled out the receipt. I didn't need to say anything more. I handed it to him, and his eyes went wide as he took it. For a moment, there was complete silence between us. I could see the panic in his eyes, the way he suddenly couldn't look at me. "Mark," I said again, my voice a little firmer now, "what is this? Why was Charlotte at the doctor with you?" He swallowed hard, and I saw him hesitate. He wasn't going to answer right away. "It's not what you think, Mom," he said finally, his voice shaky. "Please, just tell me the truth." I urged him, my patience wearing thin. Mark shifted uncomfortably, clearly struggling with what to say. Then, with a sigh, he looked up at me. "Charlotte's not pregnant with Dad's baby," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But she is pregnant. And it's mine." I stared at him, my breath catching in my throat. The words didn't make sense. My mind raced, trying to process what he was saying. You're telling me that Charlotte is pregnant with your baby?" I whispered, unable to believe it. He nodded slowly, his eyes full of guilt and shame. "I didn't want to hurt you, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "I never meant for this to happen. But it did, and now I don't know what to do." I sat there, stunned, unable to speak for what felt like an eternity. The room around me seemed to close in. I had spent so many years caring for him, loving him unconditionally, and now this. I felt a deep, aching pain in my chest. But it wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way Mark was talking, as if he thought I would somehow understand, somehow forgive him. I wasn't sure what I was feeling anymore. Anger? Disappointment? Or something worse, something I hadn't been prepared for. I finally found my voice. "You've got a lot to figure out, Mark," I said, my voice cold now. "And I think you need to do it without me." He looked at me, his eyes wide. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You can't expect me to just forgive this. I've spent my whole life putting this family first. And now, I'm left to pick up the pieces." I stood up, my legs shaky but determined. "I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm done." Mark sat there in silence, looking lost. But I didn't care. I had been hurt in ways I never thought possible, and now I had to take control. I had to protect myself. And no matter how painful it was, I knew I had to walk away. I didn't know what to feel anymore. The words Mark had said echoed in my head over and over again. Charlotte is pregnant. And it's mine. I had always thought of my son as a good man, someone who understood loyalty and honor, someone who would never betray his family. But now, as I looked at him sitting there, his eyes filled with guilt, I realized how wrong I had been. The pain in my chest was overwhelming. It wasn't just about what Charlotte had done, though that hurt more than I could ever explain. It was the fact that my own son had betrayed me, and in the worst way possible. For years, I had stood by him, supported him, always trying to keep the peace. I had raised him to be better than this, to value family above all else. And now, here he was, sitting in front of me, completely lost and asking for my forgiveness. I didn't know how to forgive him. I didn't know if I ever could. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. Mark had no idea how much he had just torn apart. He had no idea that the foundation of everything I had worked for, everything I had believed in, was now crumbling. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I forced it back down. I had to remain calm. "What are you going to do, Mark?" I asked, my voice trembling but controlled. "You've made a mess of everything. Your father's gone, and now this." I motioned between us, the space between us feeling larger than ever. Mark opened his mouth to say something, but he didn't get the chance. "Don't," I said, holding up my hand. "Don't make excuses. You've already said enough. Now you have to face the consequences." He looked like he was about to argue, but then he just slumped, his shoulders sagging. He knew, just as I did, that nothing could fix this. "I don't know how this happened," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way." "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I repeated, my voice rising, a hint of bitterness slipping through. "You didn't mean for this? Well, guess what? This is your reality now. This is what you've done. And now I have to live with it." I felt tears welling in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wasn't going to let him see me cry. Not now. "I never wanted this for you," I continued, my voice softer now. "I raised you to be a man of integrity, to be better than this. But now I have to look at you, my own son, and wonder where I went wrong." Mark wiped his face with the back of his hand, looking up at me. "Mom, I am so sorry. I don't know how to fix this, but I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." "You can't fix this," I said, shaking my head. "You can't fix what's already been broken. All I want now is for you to stop lying to yourself and to me." He stood up suddenly, his hands clenched at his sides. "What do you want from me?" "I'm trying. I don't know what to do, but I can't just pretend this never happened. I can't undo it." His words hit me like a slap. I could see the frustration in his eyes, but it only made the situation worse. "No," I said, standing up as well. "You can't undo it. But you can make things right with her. You owe Charlotte and the baby that much." Mark's face twisted in anger, but he quickly masked it, sitting back down. "I will, Mom. I promise. I just don't know where to start." I took a deep breath, my emotions still raw. I didn't know what to tell him. I didn't know what the right answer was. The one thing I did know, however, was that I couldn't be a part of this. Not now. Not like this. I had given so much of myself to this family, and now it was all falling apart. I had spent my life making sure they were happy, keeping the peace, and now I was the one who was left picking up the pieces. I looked at Mark one last time, my heart breaking for the son I once knew. "I can't help you with this," I said quietly. "You need to figure it out. You need to figure out who you are and what you want. But you can't do it with me." Mark's face crumpled, his eyes filled with desperation. "Please, Mom, don't shut me out. I need you." "No, Mark," I said, my voice firm. "You don't need me. Not right now. You need to find your own way, and I need to find mine." I turned and walked out of the room, my footsteps heavy, my heart heavier. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. My life, our family, would never be the same. I spent the next few days in a haze, unable to shake the conversation with Mark from my mind. It was as if everything I had known about my family, about the life I had built, was crumbling before my eyes. I had always prided myself on being strong, on being the one who kept the family together, but now I was questioning everything. I couldn't look at Mark the same way anymore. Every time I saw him, I felt this deep ache in my chest, this sense of betrayal that wouldn't go away. But more than that, I was angry. Angry at Charlotte for what she had done, angry at Mark for not seeing it, and angry at myself for not recognizing the signs sooner. I spent a lot of time alone in the house, trying to figure out my next move. I knew I couldn't just sit back and let things go on as they were. I had to do something. I couldn't let Charlotte get away with tearing apart everything I had worked for. She had to be held accountable. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't just her I needed to confront. It was Mark too. He had a part in this, whether he realized it or not. He had allowed it to happen. He had let her manipulate him, and now he was part of the mess. I had spent so many years raising him, teaching him right from wrong, and now I was watching him fall into her hands. It hurt more than I could ever express. But I had to be strong. I had to show him that this was not the way to handle things. I decided to confront Mark again. This time, I wouldn't let him hide behind excuses. I needed him to face the truth, to see what had really happened. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was something I had to do. When he came over a few days later, I didn't waste any time. I called him into the living room, my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared to face him once again. "Mark," I said, my voice steady but firm. "We need to talk." He sat down across from me, looking guilty, his hands clenched together in his lap. "I know, Mom," he said, his voice low. "I know I've messed up." "You have?" I replied, not holding back. "But it's not just about what you've done. It's about what you've allowed to happen. What Charlotte has done. You've let her manipulate you, and you've let her destroy everything we've built." He winced at my words, but I didn't stop. "I spent my whole life taking care of you, Mark. I made sure you were happy, made sure you had everything you needed. And this is how you repay me? By letting her take over everything." He looked down at his hands, unable to meet my gaze. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he whispered. "I didn't know she was like this. I didn't know she would do something like this." "You should have known," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "You should have seen it. You should have known who she was before it got this far. But you didn't. And now look at us. Look at what's happened." He finally looked up at me, his eyes full of regret. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt you." I shook my head, tears threatening to spill from my eyes, but I held them back. "It's not just about me, Mark," I said softly. "It's about our family. It's about the trust that's been broken, the love that's been betrayed. And I don't know if we can ever get that back." He stood up, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. "What do you want me to do, Mom?" he asked, his voice desperate. "I don't know," I said, my heart heavy. "I don't know if there's anything you can do. But I know one thing. I'm not going to let this slide. I'm not going to let her get away with this." He looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt. "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know yet," I said, my tone hardening. "But I'll figure it out. And when I do, Charlotte won't know what hit her." I could see the fear in his eyes, but it wasn't fear for me. It was fear of what I might do next. And that's when I realized he wasn't the person I needed to worry about anymore. I had to focus on Charlotte. She was the one who had crossed the line, and she was the one who needed to be held accountable for her actions. I stood up, my resolve stronger than ever. "You need to fix this, Mark," I said, my voice firm. "But it's not going to be easy. You're going to have to fight for it. And so will I." I spent the following days in a haze, trying to absorb everything that had happened. Mark had confessed, and though I had been expecting it, hearing him admit it still felt like a punch to the gut. I couldn't understand how we had gotten here, how everything I had worked so hard for could unravel so quickly. The nights were the hardest. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversations, trying to find some kind of logic, some reason why Mark had let this happen. I was consumed with anger, betrayal, and hurt. But what made it worse was the feeling of helplessness. I was no longer in control of anything. The family I had built, the foundation I had so carefully nurtured, was slipping through my fingers. I had always been the strong one, the one who held everything together, but now, I didn't even know where to start to put the pieces back. A part of me wanted to confront Charlotte, to accuse her, to make her feel the same pain she had caused. But I knew that wasn't the answer. I couldn't let her manipulate me any longer. I had to focus on getting back my life, on finding some way to regain control. A few days later, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I needed to see Charlotte, to confront her directly. I had been avoiding her phone calls and texts, but now, I couldn't hide anymore. I wasn't going to let her continue to twist the story, to play the victim. It was time for me to take charge of the narrative. When I arrived at their house, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. I hadn't been there since everything had changed, and now, the thought of walking through that door again made my stomach turn. But I knew I had to do this. I rang the doorbell, and Charlotte opened the door, a smile already on her face, as if nothing had happened. It made me sick to my stomach. "Hi, Eleanor," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "What brings you by?" I forced a smile, masking the anger that bubbled beneath the surface. "We need to talk," I said flatly. She stepped aside, allowing me to enter. I could feel her eyes on me as I walked through the door, but I didn't look back. I wasn't going to let her see the fear or hesitation in my eyes. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice suddenly turning cold. I turned to face her. "You know exactly what this is about," I said, my tone sharp. "You've been playing a game, Charlotte, and I'm done letting you think you're in control." She raised an eyebrow, her smug expression faltering for just a second. "I don't know what you mean," she said, but there was a nervous edge in her voice now. I stepped closer to her, my eyes narrowing. Don't play dumb. I know what you've been doing. I know about the doctor's appointment, the lies, the manipulation. You thought you could walk all over me, over Mark, over this family, but you're wrong. I'm not going to let you ruin everything I've worked for. Charlotte took a step back, as if trying to distance herself from me, but I wasn't done yet. You can't just come in here, mess everything up, and think you can get away with it. You're not going to get away with this. Not anymore. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, silencing her. No, Charlotte. This isn't a conversation. This is a warning. I'm not afraid of you, and I'm not afraid to take action. You've crossed the line, and now you have to face the consequences. She looked at me, her face pale and flushed with anger, but there was fear in her eyes now. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice trembling. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about, I said, my voice low and firm. You've been lying to everyone, including yourself. But now, the truth is going to come out. And I'll make sure of it. I turned to leave, but just before I stepped out the door, I looked back at her one last time. You think you've won? You haven't. You've only just started to realize what happens when you cross the wrong person. This family is mine, and I will fight to protect it. Remember that. With that, I walked out, leaving her standing there, stunned and speechless. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with the tension I had created. But I knew this was only the beginning. Charlotte had no idea what was coming for her, and I wasn't going to stop until she paid for what she had done. I woke up the next morning feeling an unfamiliar calm. The confrontation with Charlotte had gone exactly how I had planned, but now, as I sat in the quiet of my living room, I felt the weight of what I had done. I had warned her, made it clear that I wasn't going to let her get away with destroying my family. But now that the words were out, I was left with a strange emptiness. I had spent so much time preparing for that moment, anticipating the anger, the confrontation, but now I was left alone with the aftermath. The house felt different, quieter somehow. There was no laughter coming from the kitchen where I used to prepare dinner for my family. No sound of Mark's footsteps in the hallway. It was as if the life I had built was slowly being erased, piece by piece. I couldn't let myself fall apart now, though. Not yet. I had made a decision, and I had to see it through. I couldn't let Charlotte win. She thought she could control everything, manipulate us all, but I wasn't going to let that happen. I had raised my son to know better than to let someone like her tear us apart. And now, it was time to remind him of that. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. The truth was out, and Mark was going to have to face it. He couldn't keep ignoring the fact that his wife was lying to him, using him for her own gain. I didn't know how he was going to react, but I knew I had to give him a chance to see the truth for himself. Later that day, Mark came over. I could tell by the look in his eyes that he had been thinking about our conversation. His face was pale, his jaw clenched as if he were bracing for something. He walked into the living room without saying a word, and I could see the weight of everything pressing down on him. He didn't sit down right away. Instead, he just stood there, looking at me with a mix of guilt and fear. Mom, he said, his voice low. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I know I messed up. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, watching him. I had warned him, and now it was his turn to deal with the consequences. I don't know how I let it get this far, he continued, his voice shaking. I never wanted to hurt you, but I didn't know what else to do. Charlotte, He stopped himself, looking down at his hands, his voice faltering. I thought I could fix everything, that I could make it all right, but now I see I was wrong. It's not just about you, Mark, I said, my voice steady but firm. It's about everything. About our family, about the trust that's been broken. You can't just pretend this didn't happen. You can't go back to how things were. He nodded, his eyes filled with regret. I know, he whispered, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how to make it right. You can't fix it all at once, I said, my voice softening. But you have to start by facing the truth. You have to understand what Charlotte's done and what she's trying to do. And you need to stop letting her manipulate you. You have to choose who you want to be. Mark looked at me, his eyes searching mine, as if looking for some kind of answer, some way to make everything better. But there was no easy fix. I'll try, Mom. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right, he said. But I wasn't so sure anymore. I wanted to believe him, but the hurt was still too fresh. How could I trust him again after everything that had happened? How could I trust that he wouldn't just fall back into her trap? I stood up, taking a deep breath. You need to figure this out on your own, Mark, I said. You need to make a decision, and I can't be the one to make it for you. But remember this, I'm not going to stand by and let Charlotte tear this family apart. I've already lost enough. He looked at me, his face pale with emotion, but he didn't say anything else. I could see the wheels turning in his mind, the guilt weighing on him. But I wasn't sure it would be enough. I wasn't sure that he could break free from her. As I watched him walk out the door, I felt a strange sense of finality. It was no longer just about me and Mark. It was about the family we had all built, and whether or not we could salvage it. I wasn't sure if we could, but I knew I wasn't going to stop trying. I spent the next few days in a state of deep reflection, trying to make sense of everything. Mark had left, and I hadn't heard from him since our conversation. Charlotte, on the other hand, was still doing everything she could to maintain the illusion of normalcy. It was as if nothing had changed, as if the bombshell she had dropped didn't shatter the very foundation of everything I had believed in. But I couldn't let it go. I knew I had to make a choice, and that choice wasn't going to be easy. The truth had been exposed, but now, I had to decide what I was going to do about it. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't just sit back and watch as Charlotte played her games, tearing apart the very fabric of our family. I had to take action. I was tired of being the one who fixed everything, of being the one who made sacrifices, while others took advantage of me. This was my time, my life, my choices, my family, and I wasn't going to let anyone destroy it. I decided to pay Charlotte a visit. I had a feeling that it was time to end this, once and for all. It wasn't just about Mark anymore. It was about taking back control, about showing Charlotte that I wouldn't let her get away with this any longer. I called her, and for the first time, there was no polite small talk, no pretending. I knew exactly what I had to do. When I arrived at her house, I didn't knock. I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked straight in, determined to face her. She was sitting in the living room, looking perfectly composed, as if nothing had happened. "Eleanor," she said with a tight smile, clearly trying to hide the discomfort in her voice. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I took a step closer, watching her carefully. Her eyes shifted, and I could tell she was beginning to feel the pressure. She knew what was coming. "We need to talk," I said firmly. "About everything." She raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. "About what?" she asked, though I could tell she already knew. I didn't waste any time. "I know what you've been doing, Charlotte," I said, my voice steady but cold. "I know you've been lying to Mark, manipulating him, and trying to destroy this family. But I'm not going to let you do it anymore." Her expression faltered, just for a second, and I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. But she quickly masked it with a smile. "You're overreacting, Eleanor," she said smoothly. "You don't know the whole story." I shook my head, refusing to let her off the hook. "I know enough. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything is fine. You've crossed a line, and now you're going to face the consequences." I paused, watching her closely. "You're not going to get away with this. You've manipulated Mark, lied to him, and tried to tear apart everything I've worked for. And I'm done letting you have control." Her face tightened, and for the first time, I saw her mask slip. "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped. "Mark and I raised my hand, cutting her off. "No," I said, my voice firm. "I've seen enough. I've heard enough. You've been playing a dangerous game, and now it's over." She stood up, her anger rising. "You think you can just come in here and dictate what happens?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "You have no idea what you're up against." I stepped closer to her, my eyes locked on hers. "I know exactly what I'm up against," I said quietly, "and I'm not afraid anymore." She took a step back, clearly unnerved by my resolve. "You don't scare me, Eleanor," she said, though I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had already said everything I needed to say. As I turned to leave, I looked back at her one last time. "You've made a big mistake, Charlotte," I said, my voice cold and unwavering. "And you're going to regret it." I walked out of her house without another word, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a long time, I felt in control. I had made my stand, and I wasn't going to let anyone push me around anymore. The road ahead would be difficult, but I knew I had to keep moving forward. The truth was out now, and there was no turning back. It was time to rebuild, to take back what was mine. And I wasn't going to stop until I did. In this gripping tale of family dynamics, a mother finds herself facing a betrayal that shakes the very foundation of her family. As secrets unfold, the story dives into the complexities of trust and manipulation. The mother, who has always held her family together, must confront the emotional turmoil caused by her daughter-in-law's actions. When the mother discovers the truth about her son's involvement with his wife's betrayal, it becomes clear that their family is on the verge of unraveling. As tensions rise, this powerful family story highlights the raw emotions and difficult choices a mother must make to protect her loved ones. Through every twist and turn, this family story explores the heartbreaking consequences of betrayal and the strength required to move forward. Ultimately, the mother takes a stand, determined to regain control and protect the bonds that once held her family together. If you're drawn to powerful family stories about betrayal, manipulation, and the quest for justice, this narrative offers a compelling journey that will resonate deeply. As the mother faces these challenges head-on, the emotional stakes grow higher, and you will be left reflecting on your own family's relationships and what truly matters. Family stories like this one are a reminder of how fragile trust can be and how powerful the bond of family truly is. Create a realistic portrait of a white woman aged around 60 to 65 years old. She has short gray hair and is dressed in a simple but elegant outfit. The image should be a frontal view of her face. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Create a realistic portrait of a white woman aged around 30 to 35 years old. She has long dark brown hair and is wearing a smart casual outfit. The image should be a frontal view of her face with a confident expression. No cartoon, no CGI, no illustration. Scene 1. A tense confrontation between the two main characters, the mother and the daughter-in-law, in a dimly lit living room. The atmosphere is thick with tension as the two women stand facing each other, their eyes locked in a fierce, silent battle. The mother's expression is calm, but her fists are clenched, her body language radiating a quiet but undeniable power. The daughter-in-law, standing opposite her, is visibly agitated, a mix of defiance and fear in her gaze. There is no physical violence, but the intensity of the moment speaks volumes as they prepare for the final showdown. In the background, the faint sound of a ticking clock adds to the suspense of the confrontation, symbolizing the passing time and the impending decisions that will change everything. The room feels small, as if the walls themselves are closing in on the two women, each determined to win, no matter the cost. Scene 2. The first main character, the mother, is in her kitchen, preparing a simple meal. The warm light of the kitchen contrasts with the heaviness of her thoughts. She moves with purpose, though there is a quiet sadness in her movements. She sets the table for one, looking around at the empty space where her family used to sit. The sound of a kettle boiling is the only noise in the room, highlighting the loneliness she now feels. Her face is soft, with a mix of resignation and strength, as if she's accepting that the life she once knew is slipping away. Yet, there is a flicker of determination in her eyes, a quiet resolve that she will not be broken. The scene captures the woman as she continues with her day-to-day life, but the weight of betrayal lingers in the air. Scene 3. The second main character, the daughter-in-law, is seen at work, sitting at her desk, typing away on her computer. Her office is sleek and modern, filled with clean lines and organized chaos. She appears confident, almost too perfect, with a smile that seems practiced but hollow. The camera focuses on her hands as she carefully adjusts a picture frame on her desk, a subtle hint at the facade she has been maintaining. As she glances at her phone, her expression changes for a brief moment, a flicker of unease or guilt, but it's quickly masked by a smile as she answers an incoming call. The scene captures her carefully constructed life, where everything seems perfect on the outside, but beneath the surface, there are cracks waiting to show. Her posture is poised, but her eyes betray a flicker of vulnerability. Scene 4. A tense family dinner scene, where the two main characters are seated at the same table, but there is a clear divide between them. The mother sits at the far end, her gaze sharp and calculating as she watches her son and daughter-in-law. The daughter-in-law, seated next to her husband, is trying to maintain an image of normalcy, but her movements are stiff, betraying her anxiety. The son, oblivious to the tension, is laughing and talking, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. The camera lingers on the mother's face, her eyes narrowed, as she silently processes the betrayal she's discovered. The daughter-in-law shifts uncomfortably in her seat, occasionally glancing at the mother, trying to gauge if her secret has been uncovered. The scene is charged with unspoken words, each character aware of the other's presence, but choosing to remain silent, for now. Scene 5. A quiet moment in the middle of the night, where the mother is sitting alone in her living room, staring at the family photos on the wall. The camera focuses on her hand resting on a photo of her son as a child, a symbol of the love and care she once poured into him. Her face is lit by the soft glow of a nearby lamp, her expression a mixture of sadness and determination. She looks around the room, her mind racing with the weight of the decisions ahead. The silence is overwhelming, and the stillness of the night amplifies her inner turmoil. This moment is one of reflection, as she contemplates her next move, knowing she can no longer sit idly by while her family disintegrates. Scene 6. The final showdown. The mother stands tall in her living room, a quiet strength radiating from her. She faces her son and daughter-in-law, both of them standing in front of her, their faces a mix of guilt and fear. The room is tense, but the mother speaks with conviction, her voice unwavering as she tells them the truth they have been avoiding. There is no yelling, no outbursts, just a calm, firm declaration of her boundaries. The camera lingers on her face, capturing the resolve in her eyes. The daughter-in-law looks away, unable to meet her gaze, while the son stands motionless, torn between his loyalty to his mother and his marriage. The silence that follows speaks volumes. The family is broken, but the mother has regained control of her life, no longer allowing herself to be manipulated. The scene ends with her turning and walking away, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the empty room, signifying the beginning of her new journey.